All right, welcome everybody. This is Doug Campbell-John, your host of Revenue Renegades, and this week I am pleased to welcome Siki Chen to the show, the CEO of Runway. I'll let him explain it to you, but it's Andreessen Horowitz-funded company that's reimagining financial planning. Siki, I do have to say, you have one of the funniest things on your LinkedIn profile that I think I'd ever seen. I was kind of scrolling before this interview, and it was your background where you talked about one of your companies saying, what was this? Oh, VO, like YouTube, but not as good. As a dev, crashed site for 2 hours and then was made into a PM. It actually was like a laugh out loud moment for me. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. True story, though.
That's awesome. As a founder, I always love founding stories. So tell me a little bit of, how Runway came about and kind of what was the inspiration.
Well, my job before this was as a CEO of a company called Sandbox VR.
Mhm.
We're a retail company with these stores, VR stores and malls you can go to play holodeck experiences with. And we were in the middle of a Series B. The company was doing very well, and then COVID hit and shut down the world. And we're a outdoor experience where you go out with friends.
Yeah.
So when that happened, we had a scenario plan because every institutional investor, including Andreessen, was basically triaging your portfolio.
Uh-huh.
Everyone was like protecting their own companies. And we had to make a case for why we're worth saving. And as you can imagine, we're probably like at the bottom of that list. And as part of that work, we had to create a bunch of scenarios for how long COVID was going to last and what we're going to do in each of those scenarios. And remember, this is March or so of 2020. So this is when I think Elon said it's going to be over by June.
Yeah. We had
Um,
thought so.
and Andreessen said, no, we want to see a 2 year scenario. We're like,
Yeah.
you're out of your mind. Like, there's no way it's going to be 2 years. And that was like two today, pretty much, right? Like the impact. And so we created a bunch of different variations of this spreadsheet on Google Sheets. And on the tail end of that, the outcome was that they did bridge the company so that we can hibernate through COVID. And I had to lay myself off, the entire leadership team, 95% of the company. So we're from 400 employees to 10. I wasn't a founder of this company. I was joined as a chief product officer and then eventually CEO. So the founder hibernated it. And about
Right.
30 minutes after that happened, I talked to our CFO and I said, hey, we have Figma now and Notion. There's these great products for these other things that we had to do. Instead of Google Sheets or something better we could have used for planning, we just didn't bother with it, right? And
Mhm.
he's an experienced CFO from Netflix, and he said, "No, this is the best it gets." And so I had a conversation with Andreessen, and I said, "What if someone built like a Figma for finance? You know, that's something that is like really accessible, really powerful. It's a great tool for thinking." And they said, "Yeah, we've been looking for someone to build that. We think what is needed in the space is more of a consumer product approach, someone who's seen the problem, understands the problem, and for some really weird reason wants to work on finance software." And I raised my hand and said, "I want to do that." That's a really small Venn diagram of people.
Right.
And that's how Runway got started.
That's amazing. So, I mean, but your background is software engineering. It's not finance, correct?
Yeah, so I majored in math,
Mhm.
and I started my career in software engineering. That was my job throughout college. So I was working for NASA JPL
No?
then, and then I had a software engineering job at a aforementioned YouTube and a not as good site. And I also worked as a software engineer at PowerSet, which Microsoft acquired to make up a lot of the early Bing team.
Uh-huh.
And then I started my first company, and I haven't been really doing full time engineering since then. My background is in consumer products, basically, and growth. So I've had a product at Zynga, had a product at Postmates, and ran growth there too.
But a lot of folks, I mean, I'm an engineer by training, I haven't done engineering for a long time, but, finance is kind of the scary black box, for a lot of folks who come from a product or a technical background. And I think, well, we all have imposter syndromes, and we can talk about that at length and in many ways. But you've talked about this notion of finance being kind of inherently intimidating, and that it shouldn't be as scary as, it's a lot of times it's the tools, I think, is what you argue is what makes people feel inadequate. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's tools, and tools also affect culture. But for first principles, like what is finance and what is a model of finance. And the way I think about this is that the right way to think about this spreadsheet, it seems complicated and feels like, oh, I have to understand all these financial terms. But it is actually very important, very useful, because the way to think about the model is that it is a simulation of your business.
Mhm.
And in order for this model to be accurate, it's modeling all the different components of it, your marketing machine, your sales machine, your product and retention, every person in the company. Um, and so when you think about it that way, it's a simulation of software. That's actually what it is.
Yep.
And so once you understand the purpose of it, the reason why this piece of software, the simulation, is valuable to you is that you can simulate the future and
Right.
understand its information today. That's actually what it's for. And what we're used to is, well, we have to create these spreadsheets for reporting purposes to the board and investors, but that's not what the value is to you. And in order for this to be useful to you, it has to be understandable. It has to map closer to the concepts in your brain. And none of us walk around thinking about offering a company in the form of a wall of numbers in our head. That's not what's in our heads, right? It's a product roadmap, it's a marketing plan, it's a strategy,
Yep.
and that's completely disconnected with the simulation.
Tell me a little bit then, I guess, like, okay, you've got the idea, the kernel, and Dreesen has said, you're in that very small Venn diagram overlap of, crazy people who want to work on this, problem that's challenging but meaningful. Like, how did the team really think about the early days of this, of not just replicating the spreadsheet, of doing something that's radically better?
I mean, it's a combination of first principles thinking and experimentation and learning from customers. Like you need to have like it's very much an art, right? If it was a scientific process, then anyone can do it.
Right.
And so we certainly talked with a lot of customers, talked to 100 different finance people, understood the state of the art, and we learned some really surprising things. For example, the pains of the spreadsheet eventually get painful enough that everyone is looking for some kind of solution. The pains of updating it and collaborating with the rest of the team, and you buy something really expensive like an adaptive or an anim plan, but 100% of the time you actually can't get it for your spreadsheet. So we learned some interesting things there. And
Hmm.
a big question, I guess, is why. Another component is just trying things, building different prototypes, playing
Hmm.
with it, seeing what feels good, right? So that was important. And then the third ingredient was thinking for first principles, like what is a model and what are you really trying to do? And this is where we realize that this is like much bigger than finance. And one of the things that we say a lot internally is finance is actually not about finance at all. Finance is everything that happens in a company. Like
Hmm.
everything that you do falls to the bottom line somewhere, but we don't think about it in those terms, right? Like you spend $100 million in R&D and engineering and product and design, and that is a good investment. And the costs are very clear, but you're investing that for reasons, right? And the reasons are you're improving your contract value, you're improving your close rate, conversion rate, engagement, retention, and all of those has like dramatic effects on the financial outcomes of the company. So everything that you do falls to the bottom line somewhere. And software today doesn't reflect that.
So when you were starting and doing all these experiments, what was kind of what's the initial one that hit? What was the first one that people kind of grabbed onto and said, "Ah, that's kind of solving something meaningful for me."
Yeah, so I actually built for myself, and it's like, well, here's what I wanted as an operator.
Mhm.
And that did hit to some extent, but we also learned some pretty valuable lessons from it. And so the first version we built is just a very fancy pivot table. And so the way it works is you can take all of your expenses and your transactions from QuickBooks or your general ledger, and you can basically view it and pivot it however you want instantly. And you can also manipulate it. So for example, typically, as an entrepreneur, you look at your QuickBooks or you get some report from your accountant and it's like a bunch of different accounts, right?
Right.
But you probably don't think about your business in that exact way.
Right.
You're probably thinking about it as like, here's my engineering costs, here's my sales costs, I have a sales department. And so what we allowed you to do is you could just view it by instantly pivot it by here's sales, here's engineering, here's product, if that's what you want, and here's my at administrative costs. And then you can say, I want to view my engineering costs by vendor, and I want to view my revenue or sales by customer.
Okay.
and you can like mix and match your pivots on the same level. And then what you could do is maybe for some reason, all of your Google hosting costs was lumped into G&A because it was categorized wrong. And it's kind of like Mint, right? In Mint, though, to fix that, you had to write like a regular expression to match it and manually fix it. The way it worked in V0 of Runway is that you can actually just drag that to a different node and
Oh,
it'll just work. It'll recategorize it instantly. All of those transactions that are related and remember it moving forward. And so it was very, very nice, and it gave you a very good idea of where your money went.
nice.
That was the first version.
And so when you think about scaling that, right? And so did you feel like at what point did you have product market fit? And also, put this in a time frame for us. Is this BC? Is this before ChatGPT or post ChatGPT when this is
We
happening?
were founded the same month, I think, when the GPT-3 came out.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so this would be, I think, 3 years before ChatGPT.
Okay. First of all, it sounds like that version that was scratching an itch for you, and I'm a huge believer in, like, building things for yourself, right? I always think that when one or more of the founders is saying, like, "I have this personal pain," that doesn't mean the rest of the world has the exact same pain, so it's always good to test that, but it sounds like you found something that solved a pain for you, and that was solving pain for lots of other people as well in V1.
That's right.
And then at what point does AI enter the equation, right, for you in your thinking, your product roadmap?
Fairly early, actually. I mean, I have not been a primary engineer on
Mhm.
the product at any given point in time, but one of the few PRs I wrote was a PR that, and this is 2020. We were actually, I think, one of the first companies to get access to GPT-3. I emailed GDB because, like, hey, I wonder what GPT-3 can do in a finance use case.
Yep.
And we built this just the dumbest feature, and we shipped it in May 2020. The AI feature, and what it did, and it's a completely different product because we don't have this anymore, but um, it took the names of your accounts and it tried to pick the best emoji for it as a label.
Deep, meaningful use of AI. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, we wanted to feel like a consumer product, right? And so Notion has, like, these emojis, and so we
Yeah,
thought, like, wouldn't it be cool to have, like, nice emojis next to all your account names? So that's the very first thing that we built, in 2020. And then, yeah, we've been working on different versions of how to apply AI to financial modeling forecasting use case. And my mental model of this um, it's actually a really great technology for this use case because if we use it in the right way, right? As humans, we are good at understanding language,
uh-huh,
which is why ChatGPT feels so smart because it's a language model. But we're not good at doing mental math, so we have spreadsheets.
right.
And so, in the same way, we have the equivalent of a spreadsheet, this model on Runway, and you can just talk to it and have it understand context so that you can manipulate the spreadsheet in some way. Even with GPT-4, it was really hard for it to understand the intent and the full context of the spreadsheet
Uh-huh,
for it to do useful work. And this is sort of the better lesson that's been learned by multiple companies, right? Reuters famously, they try to fine tune their own GPT-3, and then GPT-4 came out, blew their fine tune out of the water.
got it.
And we learned a similar lesson. It wasn't really until '01, September last year, and '03 this year when the reasoning models came out, where this is actually gonna capable of doing very useful work in the financial space. And so, yeah, we have a number of different AI features that we can talk about. But before that, we use AI extensively as tooling internally. And
Mm,
so right now you can build there's a bunch of products that you can just now buy for almost anything with AI. 2 or 3 years ago, that wasn't the case.
mhm,
And so one of the first things we built a lot of stuff actually now that I think about it. One of the first things we built is when our website went viral about 3 years ago, we were getting multiple signups a minute, and we could no longer qualify by hand. And so you couldn't just buy this thing off the shelf. So what we built is an automation that took your email that you signed up with, passed it to Clearbit, got enrichment, passed that to a GPT evaluator to see if it's qualified or not. then pipe it into Slack if it is qualified. And then if it's qualified, we do research on the website and the domain, and then we will draft an email that will make a clever pun connecting what we do and Runway and some kind of flight reference to what they do in the draft email and put it in the draft of my Gmail folder. So when I wake up, I would just get a bunch of pre-qualified draft emails. I think just need to press send on. This is 3 years ago. Now, of course, you can just buy that automatically.
Right.
Uh, we built a bot called Jam Session,
Okay.
which is really fun. And so Jam Session is our Notion bot, and you can mention Jam Session like you can with any other user. And the way you use it is you say add Jam Session with person. So you say add Jam Session with Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
and Steve Jobs will now come in and critique your document in the voice of Steve Jobs. And excerpt different parts of it, and now you can have a conversation. Or you can do Elon Musk, you can do Daffy Duck, which is very fun. So that's another thing that we built. Built this automatic email classifier. So like what Perplexity did
Hmm.
recently with their assistant, like
Right.
kind of built that by hand. Um, and not a well-known fact, but actually, if you go open ChatGPT right now, go to GPT Store and click on education. I am the creator of the number one GPT under that category. It's called Universal Primer, and it's a speed learning GPT basically. And the idea is we'll recursively explain all the prerequisite concepts if you want to learn something very complicated.
It's fascinating that you're building stuff that probably any of those would be a Y Combinator company on their own, and somebody would want to build that and turn it into something. But you just were
That's
building.
where we live in. Yeah, that's just now possible today to do
Yeah.
really quickly, right? Like one of the underappreciated effects of AI is that it's democratized building
Yeah.
in very meaningful ways.
You've talked about how AI was used initially for, just the emoji thing. Let's try it out. Then being used for these very interesting internal tools. But like, what are the ways that AI is being used in the product today? Because I've heard you describe this as like wanting to give finance people an Iron Man
Yeah.
super suit.
Yeah. So one of the more obvious ways, right, that we are building AI into Runway is agents, right? And everyone knows how that works. Our opinion on agents is that it should feel like a coworker. So what that means is it's not just like a chat window on the side. Um, you should be able to reference them in a comment. You of course can chat directly, but you should be able to email this RE, as what we call them internally, the artificial real intelligence, or it should be show up in Slack, and you should just have conversation with them, right? And so that's the more well understood expression of AI. But what I'm more interested in are thinking deeply about how existing well-known UI paradigms should and can be reinvented in an AI native way. Um, so there's a few inspirations for this, but the one that comes to mind first is one of the most interesting things, one of the most interesting impactful AI features that I've ever seen is in ChatGPT when ChatGPT first came out. But it's not the LM, it's not the chat. I don't think anyone has really like talked much about this, but the most interesting thing about ChatGPT as a product when it first came out on day one is the sidebar.
Hmm.
And what really blew my mind is seeing that a sidebar where the chats, this list of chats name themselves.
Yep.
That's actually it's so subtle, it's
Yep.
automatic, understated, but it is fundamentally magical because that was technologically not possible before.
Right.
Right,
Right.
and so anytime you have a list of kind of things, your expectation is that you're gonna give it a name,
Right.
right? You press the add button, name the Slack channel.
Hmm.
That's what we're used to. You don't do that, and that was just so interesting to me, and I think there are just so many different examples of that that has been untapped, if you really think deeply about this, and I'll tell you a bunch that we've built or are working on now. Some are production, some beta, some not. Um, but the other inspiration here is Joel Spolsky, from Joel and Software back in the day. One of the things I remember a lot is when he described the difference between the Google engineer and the Microsoft engineer,
Hmm.
and he said engineer at Google uses a Bayesian filter the way a Microsoft engineer uses an if statement. I was
Right.
like, "Oh, that's a really interesting way of, like, describing the engineering culture difference." And I think a truly AI native product should use an LLM call the way a traditional piece of software uses an if statement. It is, like, not just probabilistic, but it's intelligent, right? So, uh, like, what's a really small example of this, um, that's we built? So we have this, feature called explain mode, and the inspiration behind this is that when you use a traditional AI product, right? ChatGPT, for example, um, the limitations are that it, of course, does not do anything unless you talk to it.
Right.
And in order for it to do something, you have to know what it can do, right? Like, what are the tools that are available? And so, without that context and without that practice, it does nothing. And so, we thought, what would be a more interesting way of exposing the power of AI? So we have built this thing called explain mode. And the idea is when you're looking at a new piece of software or looking at information, you're going to have questions about it,
Mhm.
right? And so what we built is this feature where you hold down the option key, your cursor changes slightly. And now when you move your mouse over any number, any button, any page, any link, we just have a tooltip that just talks to you and explains what it is.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Share my screen. I can show it to you right now and demo it to you.
Yeah, oh yeah, please,
You
let's
want to see
take
it?
a yeah, I'd love to. This is the stuff I wrestle with all the time because I mean, I come, I've been in software for a while like you, and I constantly am trying to say like, how do I not just repeat a forms over database kind of metaphor for everything, right?
Yeah.
What's fundamentally changing? And I don't think it means like, in our world of CRM, I don't think it means just give people a chat window and let them, and give nothing else. But there are if you're really AI native, there are these things that suddenly crop up throughout the product as these magical moments. So yeah, would love to see it.
Okay. Yeah. So here's a runway screen here. And yeah, so we have this nice little interface. But what's really cool is this is a sample instance, right?
Yep.
Say you have a question about. I'm just turn on variance here. Let's say I'm doing a comparison, right? BBA.
Mhm.
Um, and here's a comparison, and I'm wondering, oh, I wonder why this is 451,000, or I wonder like how this formula works, for example.
Mhm.
And so instead of like asking a question in chat, what you can just do is like hold down option key here, everything I mouse over instantly, it will explain what this page does. Here's what this page does, right? Here is how this driver works. I wonder
Mm.
how this formula works. Here's how that works. This is the runway. Here's how it's calculated. Why is there a variance? Well, let's figure out. Well, it's because that's how bank balances are pulled, right?
That is so friggin' cool.
It's pretty cool, right? And so this is just like one example of
Mhm.
the kind of thinking that makes something an Iron Man suit
Right.
versus an external creature, right? And so in some ways, what you just saw is an AI native tooltip,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Never seen that before. That's radical. I
We
love it.
we went through um,
Yeah.
uh, and we patented the shit out of it too. But anyway, um, but there's like so much possibility here, right? So you think about Warp, right? Warp is this AI native shell, right? Terminal, and it's cool. You can enter commands, but if you enter English, it works too,
Mhm.
right? So one of the things we think about is like, well, how do you, what does AI native text input look like?
Yep.
It should take both the format I expect, but also natural language. But
Right.
then, when you have natural language intent, you might need to do a few variant variations of it. You need to iterate a few times. So, like, we need to have like inline chat, right? And so there's so much that you can do if you go beyond this idea that an LLM is best used as like a creature, as opposed to something that can make and we're positioned as a tool for thought, so it makes sense for us, maybe less for other products, make a tool for thinking better, right? We can explain things in human language, and of course, we should accept things in human language too.
Yeah.
But if you want to fine tune it, you can also do that.
One of the things I broke my elbow a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that's been fascinating for me is like learning all the voice tools and how good voices become. Like I'm using this app called Monologue, which is better than the built-in stuff on the Mac. And it's been interesting even in our own product because we have like this notion of natural language filters. So I can just say like, go show me all the folks in California at companies between 50 and 500 employees that use Salesforce, and boom, like, I've never touched the keyboard, right? And there's just I think that, you know, I could be wrong. I don't think that AI native products are necessarily going to throw away all the elements, from the past. I mean, it turns out that spreadsheets and tables are still a pretty good metaphor for lots of things.
Yeah,
You know, People have been trying to kill spreadsheets for years, and that's not going away. But I do think
100%.
that these magic moments, suddenly, just like these moments of delight throughout the product, are just going to keep building and building.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with the team because I've been working, with the AI pod closely. I PM'd. I'm a individual contributor PM, and the one pod I PM is AI pod. Um, but uh, we had a conversation about this, and the analogy we use is like if you ever watched this movie called Minority Report, the
Yep.
Spielberg movie, right? There was this joke when it first came out in the I think it was the 90s, right? And uh, it's set in 2060, so everything's futuristic, flying cars and everything, but it's all kind of like grounded. So of course, like one of the things they try to make futuristic is computing, and so they have these like screens that are floating, in front of you, and famously, like Tom Cruise, you use a computer with like moving your hands around,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then there was this. I read this comic that's written by HCI, a human, UI designer people, and the joke was like, "This is what everyone's biceps looks like in the year 2016," and they're all like super buff because like your arms are like out there all the time, right? And it's just an example of like, no, actually, the keyboard and mouse work for a very good reason.
Right.
That will not be the future because of the ergonomics of it. So much of interfaces, the human computer interface is actually fairly windy,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, like so if you take that bet, then the how you make those same paradigms, this buttons, drop down forms, text inputs, tooltips, AI native is actually quite valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember. I can't remember what company it was. I think Google acquired them, but or maybe Apple did. But it was the first kind of pinch and zoom on a tablet kind of demonstration and a TED talk. And this was, post Minority Report, where it was suddenly like, wait a minute, that's not as far off as you thought. But this was pre iPhone, pre all of that stuff. And now, of course, we still have I still have a keyboard sitting on my laptop, but it's amazing how much of these different metaphors end up being appropriate for certain situations. It's not a one size fits all, right? I could geek out on product and user interface with you forever, but let's shift gears here for a little bit and just talk about like the kind of personal piece, because you've talked. I've read some of your stuff where you talk about the work life balances being overrated, but like how do you integrate in this kind of integration with family and work? So talk to me a little about your philosophies there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm no longer a very well qualified person to talk about it because I work quite a bit. But yeah, actually, no, I take that back. The things I work on are actually quite relevant and important, right? So the idea behind that is that there is this it implies a certain dualism, right? The
Mhm.
very phrase work life balance, right? As if there are like different, but
Yeah.
work is very much an integral part of life,
Right.
right? Like I don't work to live, and I don't think humans really do that.
Mhm.
Like it is part of what, when people lose their jobs or stop working, they lose a sense of fulfillment and happiness. It's like very important to them. And so the distinction I feel like is a false distinction. So I more believe in, okay, if work is part of life, like how do you live a good life in general? And so the things I spend my time on is like I am working, and work is really important to me because one, I can provide for my family. I could be a good role model to my family and how to create value in the world and how to lead and how to communicate. Um, and then I also work on the family itself. I spend time with the kids. Um, and I also do medical research for the kids, right? Like I have to like basically run a uh, mini bio startup, and that's technically work, but is it work or is it um, for the family. And it's like, what is the distinction there, right? That's like a really real example of how uh, not separate it should be, and it really is.
For context, are you guys how old are your kids? Seek?
I have a 5-year-old and 11-year-old.
And are you guys in person in the office or remote or hybrid?
So we are hybrid.
Okay.
So we have roughly a third of our people in San Francisco, a third in New York, a third everywhere else. We were founded in a, right when COVID started, so that was the
Yep.
default. We were born into it from day one. If I were to do it over again, I would do it in person. It is clearly better. We made it work though, and the way we made it work is by bringing everyone in person at least once a quarter.
Yeah.
And we also have offices, so people come in twice a week in San Francisco, twice a week in actually almost 5 times a week in New York 'cause,
Mm.
the people there are a little bit younger.
Yeah, I think we're a remote model. I think part of the reason why it works is my co-founders are we just basically got the band back together. So we had worked in the last company,
Mm,
finish each
yeah,
other's sentences, and that goes a long way towards it.
yeah,
Like you, we get everybody together at least once a quarter, face to face. A couple of my execs are up in Portland, so I'm flying up there pretty regularly. Um, and it is a higher bandwidth channel when you're face to face for sure.
absolutely.
But I think to your point, like I think that phrase work life balance is incorrect because it implies that, you know, it's almost the mentality of like a work is the drudgery and and home life is the fun stuff, right? And if for folks like you and me, like I love what I do, man. I just like
Yeah,
it. It's not like I'm saying like, damn, I wish I could turn it off. It's like, okay, I am going to, it's going to bleed into everything. And fortunately, I've got a partner, and she's great at just like I'm in a different phase. My kids are, out of the house, and I have flexibility to travel. And I've closed, I've closed rounds of funding from Mexico. I've, gotten, you know, done team meetings from Italy. It's like, and it just kind of works. And like, there's no like, Monday through Friday, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. There really isn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like what has been you've not only started a ton of companies, but you've invested in, I don't know, dozens, if not, 100 plus. You definitely have been pretty active on the angel side as well. What do you think have been some of the key takeaways and lessons that you've gotten from those experiences? Because I assume each time you try, we all make mistakes each time. We try to make new mistakes, but like, what are some of the key things as you were going into Runway that you were like, these are the things that I want to replicate from the past or avoid from the past or other companies I've seen?
The thing that I is most interesting about having angel portfolio is when you get really good investor updates and you
Mhm.
get a glimpse of to see how a really good operator operates. And my takeaway there is the combination of reliability, discipline, and energy uh, is really valuable.
Uh-huh.
It reminds me of what I recently talked to our team about. We've had a launch last year, and it's been a tough year because, like, we've had so many new customers, and some of them are not well qualified, and we had to like grow the team. And uh, it reminds me of Jessica Livingston, I think, or Paul Graham. Paul Graham was maybe talking to Jessica Livingston about what they've learned at Y Combinator. And they said, what when we started Y Combinator, we thought that startups are a test of intelligence. But after 15 years of Y Combinator, almost 20, we realized that startups are a test of stamina.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned that through so many different ways. Dylan Field is one of our investors, and I always remember when we brought him in to do a lunch and learn with us. I asked him the last question I asked him was, "What was most surprising about taking Figma from nothing to where it is today?" And his answer was that it it was really surprising to him how few people made it all the way with the
Uh,
team. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting answer. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought that answer was interesting because what that what he's saying is that you could at the early days of Figma which is going to be one of the largest private outcomes of all time.
Yep.
Half the people were like looking left and looking right and said, we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
wild.
what's crazy, I mean, like I met Dylan. We're a Greylock company as well, so I met Dylan at a Greylock event a few years back, and I remember even talking to our investor, David Thacker, and when I started the last company. I mean, I think they were still at that. This was maybe like 3, 4 years ago. They were still in the like, yeah, I think Figma's going to make it. Right? It's crazy. I mean,
Crazy.
I would love to ask Dylan. Maybe you know this answer is like, did he know it was going to take that long? Because if you look at the Figma ramp, right, especially in today's era, it would be interesting whether he would get funded today because it was one of
Yeah.
those things. It'd be like, what do you mean you're going to give it away you're going to build it for 3 years and then give it away for 3 years or 4 years and then you're going
Three.
to start? I mean, yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
6 years before he started generating revenue,
It
and
was 6 years to $1 million in ARR. That's right.
yeah, yeah, and like today, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you're an AI dev platform and you haven't done 1 million in your first 3 months, right? It's kind of crazy,
Yeah. We
Um,
like the fast, easy money.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, to his credit, he had the end vision of seeing like the only way to win this thing. And I remember, like, I was at LinkedIn, we were using InVision. Like, I was like, what is this Figma thing, right? InVision was great, we loved it, and then it's not a company anymore, right? It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It doesn't do what Figma does.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's incredible. Um, you're also known for being kind of pretty, radically transparent about things. So are there, well, let's call it uncomfortable truths, or you think there are some things that founders need to hear about finance that is kind of an uncomfortable truth?
It's actually not that important early. That's probably a more comfortable one.
You're saying finance is not that important early.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, so that was the lesson for V1 at Runway.
Mhm.
We built a product because people want to understand where their money went, right? And it's great. You want to be very frugal. And we built that product and it did an amazing job of that. And what it told every founder basically is that all your money went to people.
Mhm.
That's it
Okay.
at the early stages. And by the way, it doesn't really change from month to month.
Right.
And when it does start changing is when things really start working and you're hiring a lot and you spend millions of dollars in marketing and it's repeatable, then you really need to understand the trade-offs of the different decisions you're about to make. And it's very, very valuable and very, very important.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's like uncomfortable. I mean, finance in general makes people uncomfortable. So it's like all kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot about founders that I feel I have different thoughts about.
Such as?
So one of the things that was the most valuable things I've learned is the tendency to undervalue your intuition, I
Mm,
think does affect a lot of founders, especially for some founders. I'm now like a third time founder and it's still impacted me greatly. And it's very stereotypical, right? Like the stereotypical piece of like story that you read about founders, right? Is someone saying like, "Man, I'm working with this founder and they just go off the vibes and their feelings and I just don't get it and it's randomizing all the time," right? Which leads me to this other contrarian thing, which is that I think like most things that you read in a form of advice or whatever are not advice because necessarily it is true, but because it is viral,
yeah.
um, right? Like it makes people feel good. If it didn't feel good, it wouldn't be popular. You never heard about it. So it's not necessarily true. And so this is an example of that. So here's the way I think about it. Here's like the way I currently think about it. People have different superpowers, whether
Uh-huh.
you're a founder or not a founder. And if you want to be a successful founder, you have to have superpowers and you have to leverage the superpowers effectively. And so if you think about what it's like or what it means to have a superpower, one of the pieces of evidence that you have a superpower is that the things that take a long time for other people to do or to come up with happens almost instantly for you,
Uh-huh.
almost unconsciously. And the things that you do tend to be even unique in that people will never come up with it.
Right.
So if you have such a superpower, then you're gonna have, and not everyone does, but you if you don't, then you're screwed anyway, right? But if you do, then what you're experiencing is you're having these ideas intuitively. You can't really explain them, and you've hired a bunch of smart people who are all smarter than you and who don't agree with it
Uh,
often, and they have very good reasons for why, well researched, well argued,
uh-huh.
and they're smart. And so you're taking that, and as a humble, open-minded founder, you're open to feedback,
Right.
and the weight that you put on your own random idea, random feeling versus like someone experienced and will research is going to be way lower. Um, and that is a failure mode.
Yeah.
And the thing, the reason why that happens is because fundamentally, if you do not value or understand what your superpowers are, then you will not take the time to build this habit of decomposing why you feel or think this,
Mm.
right? It will remain unconscious. And if it's remains unconscious and you don't decompose them, then you will not be able to explain and lead the team on why your superpower is correct and it should be this way. And that's when you get a lack of cohesion and a lack of engagement. And so it's very, very insidious. And if you do value it, even if it's not um, obvious to you in the moment, at least you'll spend the time to really figure it out. And then once you figure out, you can explain it. And then if you can explain it, oftentimes people are like, oh my God, that is actually a really valuable, good idea. And that's how
Huh.
you can actually live in your genius.
So I'm this is fascinating because I'm trying to apply this to my own, uh, thinking about myself and superpowers. I think the thing that I am good at is I think I have taste in products. I think I have, which matters a lot these days. I think I have good intuition. I think I am willing to listen to others, but as my former colleague LinkedIn used to say, I may be wrong, but I'm not confused, right? Which is his way of saying, come to me with better information or a better idea. And maybe it's just an idea. It doesn't have to have data. And if I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm willing to turn on a dime and go in another direction. But if you don't have that, this is where we're going. And I think that I the challenge is, when you've got, like you and I, you've got the three letters on your card that says CEO, is how not to wield that too strongly sometimes. Or, sometimes you just say, this is the way that we're going, right? So what you don't want to have, I remember the story of Netflix when they did, what was it, Flickster or whatever it was way back when, then they were transitioning from DVDs to streaming. And it was this stupid ass idea that Reed had about, like, we're going to do two companies and one is going to be, and because he had been so right before, everybody internally was going, well, this seems like a stupid idea, but he's been right every single time. So I'm not going to speak up. And that was, they lost like 90% of their market cap for a while and almost died and came back from that. But I do think I'm trying to think about your framework because I'm not sure that I've deconstructed my process enough to be able to explain it. And sometimes I just pull out the CEO card. This is where we're going.
I think, yeah, I think that's fine. I think like it's it's going to be more effective if you can explain it, right? Consciously and break it down. But like that doesn't work all the time. People will still disagree.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with the CEO card. It exists for a reason. The title exists for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And you're responsible for it. Um, the Yeah, when I think about the Flickster, Quickster
Oh, quick.
example,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Quickster was right. I think people look at that and say like, "Wow, that is like such a sobering lesson." But was what was the ultimate outcome of Netflix,
Right. Right.
right? And so, would you prevent Quickster and also slow down every other good decision that Reed made, right?
Mhm.
You're going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes, and Reed was accountable for that. He had to apologize. It was clearly a mistake, but like, was it the case that people didn't want to speak up? And if they did, would he have made a different decision? I'm not sure. It was like pretty high conviction in it, and it was
That's
wrong.
yeah.
And I think that should be allowed for. But what's popular is, wow, look at this, CEO, and he was like really full of himself and wasn't open to feedback and made this terrible mistake.
Yeah, and I don't see it that way, but you're right. I think that there's that lens with some people,
Yeah,
and listen, that's why I think that I never got the chance to work directly for Steve Jobs, but I got to meet him on multiple occasions, and he was clearly one of my lifetime heroes. And I think that I never, in the early days of my career, I never understood Steve's anger, and I do now, right? And I think the anger was not about um, going, my ideas are right and yours are stupid. It's that he could see something so clearly in his head about
yeah,
where he wanted to go, and
yeah,
he was
yeah,
frustrated that they weren't getting there fast enough or couldn't see it as clearly as he saw.
yeah, yeah. It is.
So I didn't mean to turn this into my personal therapy session, but thank
No,
you.
this is great. I think this is where the fun happens. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming up on time, so let's just a little bit of personal stuff about you. So you shared a little bit about your family, about this work life balance thing we talked about. What do you like to do for fun?
I run and I picked up boxing over the past couple of years. That's probably the most fun thing I do. I spar 3 or 4 times a week. It's very, very fun. I highly recommend it. Like, I actually go like, it is, stress relieving, confidence, increasing, but one of the most surprising things I learned from boxing is that it is such an intellectual sport. I
Yeah,
never imagined it was such an intellectual sport, but it is. So, I enjoy it a lot.
I've done it only a few times, and it's also remarkable how exhausting it is, how quickly it is that you get tired.
Yes.
So, like when I watch a boxing match now, I'm like, holy
Yeah.
shit, you guys are
3 rounds
incredible.
will get you on the floor, right?
Yeah.
And they're going 12. It's unbelievable. Yeah. You're like,
Uh,
it's 3 minutes. How hard could it be?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Besides that, what's something that people would be surprised to know about you?
Yeah, probably the most surprising thing is, my Myers-Briggs INTP, which is the, most introverted of all types. That's probably the most surprising thing.
Got it. And then, we're both product people. Like, what's a product that you use personally or something that's kind of made a big impact in your life?
I like 8 Sleep a lot.
Same.
Helped a lot. Another one, a small one, I like Insight Timer, for,
Mm.
meditating. It's just a
Oh,
very underrated meditation app.
okay. What do you like about it versus like, Calm or some of the other ones?
There's this particular teacher, I like, and this guy just has the most calm ASMR voice I've ever heard, and so he's only there. That's why I
That
use him. It's kind of like YouTube for meditation, basically.
Okay, I'll check that one out. I'm a Calm user. I remember Jeff Weiner was the former CEO of LinkedIn, was on the board of Headspace, and I guess it was the CEO of Headspace that was the voice of Headspace, and he was just like, it's just too
Oh, wow.
freaking weird
Yeah.
being in board meetings when suddenly this voice is coming in.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild. And then finally, just how can our listeners stay in touch with you and help you on Runway's journey?
Yeah, so we're runway.com. I'm on LinkedIn with my name. I'm on Twitter. I'm not gonna call it X, as, Blader, Blade with an R.
Awesome. Well, Siki, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time and really enjoyed the chat.
I enjoyed this too. Thanks for having me, Doug.
Thank you.